Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. My name is Marguerite Delaney, I have 68 years old, and all my life I tried to do things right. Be a good wife. A caring mother. A respectful mother-in-law. I never tried to impose myself. I believed that gentleness, listening, and loyalty were enough to create a strong family. When Raymond, my husband, died of a sudden heart attack 3 years ago, my whole world collapsed silently. 38 years of life together. 38 years of habits, tender routines, silences shared over coffee. In one night, the house emptied its beating heart. I found myself alone in this large colonial building, Cedar Hill, on the outskirts of Boston, a house we bought when we were young, madly in love, without much money but with a lot of dreams. Each room bore the imprint of our history. The small crack in the living room wall. Raymond had knocked the back of an armchair against it while laughing one New Year's Eve. The marks on the kitchen doorframe. That was where we measured Bruno every year, noting his height in pencil. Even the creaking of the stairs seemed familiar, almost reassuring. It was more than a house. It was our memory, our witness. In the first few months after his death, I clung to these memories like lifelines. I spoke aloud to Raymond as I watered the plants. I set the table for two. I listened to our favorite song in the kitchen, silent tears streaming down my wrinkled cheeks. Then one day, Bruno called me. "Mom, you shouldn't stay alone in this big house. Come live with us. The children would be delighted to have you. And Melissa too." He spoke to me of love, of extended family, of a home where I would never be alone. He swore to me that nothing would change, that I would be able to keep my bearings, my space. That this would be our home ensemble. I accepted. With the innocence of a mother who still believes that an adult son keeps his promises. But very quickly, I understood that their definition of family did not resemble the one I had constructed. At first, Melissa had been quite cordial. She smiled, called me Mother Marguerite, asked my opinion on the colors, on the layout of the living room. She even said to me one evening, a cup of tea in hand, "You're part of the house now. This is your home." I was touched. I believed it. But over time, these words became rarer, then they disappeared. Smiles turned into eager glances, exchanges into curt comments, invitations into silence. I was there, physically, but less and less included in the life of the household. They talked about projects, vacations, important decisions, without even saying a word to me. And without warning me, she started to transform everything. The old burgundy velvet sofa Raymond loved to sit on after dinner. Thrown away, replaced by a pearl gray sofa, angular and soulless. My hand-embroidered curtains, the ones I'd sewn myself during my maternity leave for Bruno. Torn down. Too visually heavy, she'd said. Even the wall clock, this magnificent gift that Raymond gave me for our 10th wedding anniversary, with this inscription engraved on the back with every beat, "I love you," had disappeared without a word. I found it one morning, dusty, forgotten in a corner of the garage between the bikes and an old cooler. I didn't say anything. Not right away. I bit my lip. I told myself they were just objects. That the important thing was to be with my son and granddaughter. But every change took a piece of my past away from me. And then one evening, everything changed for good. It was a Tuesday, I remember. It was raining outside, a light rain drumming on the windows. I had simply moved a vase in the entryway. A crystal vase that belonged to my mother, which I had always placed to the left of the console table, just under the gilded mirror. Melissa had put it elsewhere, I put it back in its place, reflexively. A small gesture. An almost instinctive act. And there, she appeared, furious, like a storm in stilettos. "You could at least ask before changing anything. It's not facing house." The tone. The look. The bite of his words. I felt a sharp, violent blow, worse than a slap. Something was ripping through my chest. As if, all of a sudden, she had taken away my right to exist here. I turned to Bruno, who had heard. He was there, in the doorway of the living room, a silent witness to this scene. I looked at him, inwardly begging for a gesture, a word, a defense. But he didn't say anything. Nothing. He looked down, like a child ashamed, unable to take a stand. And that silence destroyed me more than his wife's screams. I climbed up, slowly. One step at a time. Without a word. Without a glance. I was cold, despite the heating. A cold that came from within. I entered my room, our room, once Raymond and I, now transformed into a sanitized room. The antique furniture had been replaced by designer pieces, the floral sheets by monochrome fabrics, the air saturated with that synthetic lavender smell I hated. I no longer recognized anything. It was a showroom, not a living room. I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were barely shaking. No tears. Just a deep emptiness, a silent suffocation. I looked at the photo of Raymond in my dresser, framed in dark wood. Him, smiling, alive. It was in this same living room, one Christmas 20 years ago. I whispered to him. I miss you so much, my love. And they forgot about me. No answer, obviously. Just this silence that screamed louder than anything. And that's when I understood. It wasn't negligence. It wasn't an oversight. It was intentional. Melissa didn't want me. She wanted me house, but without me in it. She didn't consider me a member of the family, but the obstacle is discreet, an old-fashioned piece that she didn't dare throw away yet, but which she was already looking for ways to get rid of. And that evening, in the hushed calm of that strange room, I made a decision. A decision I told no one. But she was going to change everything. 3 days later, after this sentence which had changed everything, this is not your house. I got up at dawn. The sky was still pale, covered in a gray veil. I put on a simple coat, grabbed my brown leather bag, the one Raymond had given me for my 60th birthday, and called a taxi. I didn't tell anyone anything. I remained silent the entire ride to downtown Cedar Hill. The taxi moved slowly through the damp morning streets. The trees lining the avenues were dropping their russet leaves, as if they too were trying to shake off the weight of autumn. I watched the shop windows, the passers-by, the bus stops. And deep inside me, a strange calm reigned, neither anger nor revenge. Just cold lucidity. I arrived in front of the building of Master François Leroux, my notary for almost 30 years. A discreet, methodical man, always dressed in a midnight blue suit, with a reassuring appearance. He had accompanied me when I bought the house in 1986. He had known Raymond. He knew our history. When he saw me come in, he stood up, surprised but friendly. Marguerite. What a pleasure to see you again. But I suppose if you're here, it's not just to greet me? I handed him an envelope containing the title deed to the house. He opened it, scanned the documents, and nodded. Then he smiled softly, almost conspiratorially. The house is still in your name, Marguerite. You've never transferred anything. It belongs entirely to you. I looked him in the eyes, my voice calm, without trembling. I want to sell it. But discreetly. No sign. No ad in the paper. I don't want it to become a topic of conversation in the neighborhood, and especially not at home. He understood immediately. He didn't ask any unnecessary questions. He simply nodded, nodding his head. Very well. I know an agent who specializes in private sales. Trustworthy. We can proceed that way. He added after a short silence. Are you sure about your decision? I didn't hesitate. I can't continue to live in a place where I'm treated like an antique piece of furniture. I want to leave in peace, and let this house live another story. The following weeks passed in complete secrecy. I played the role of the discreet old lady, invisible in her own home. I smiled at Melissa, I answered Bruno politely, I cooked for Emily, but inside, I was preparing for my release. And then, 2 months later, one Friday morning, Master Leroux called me. Marguerite, I have something you might like. A family just visited. They fell in love with it. They came on a Saturday afternoon. A blended family, as he had told me. The mother, Claire, a nurse of Haitian origin, warm, with eyes full of gentleness. The father, Thomas, a math teacher in a high school, discreet but smiling. And their 2 children, Lucas, 9 years old, shy but curious, and Schlo, 12 years old, lively and mischievous. They did not look at the house as property, they felt it as a home. They stopped in front of the staircase, amazed. Claire touched the railing, saying, "We could hang family photos here." And Thomas looked out the window onto the garden, whispering, "It's a place where children could grow up happily." Then they turned to me, and looked me in the eyes, not through me, not over me. They spoke to me with respect. With humanity. I knew at that moment it was them. That the house would be in good hands. That it would once again become a place of love. Not a cold museum controlled by an overbearing decorator. They proposed the asking price, without negotiation. And me, I accepted. Without hesitation. Not out of whim. Not out of revenge. But because it was time for this house to live a new story. A real one. And me too. That evening, everything seemed ordinary, on the surface. The table was set as usual. Fine crystal glasses, modern white plates that Melissa was fond of. The dinner was lukewarm, almost bland, as if he already knew it wouldn't be eaten to the end. The silence was barely broken by the clinking of cutlery and the small, discreet sounds of Emily, who was playing with his pasta, forming little circles. Bruno, as usual, was talking about his work, a client who wanted everything at the last minute, a presentation that had gone wrong, an overly talkative intern. He talked non-stop, as if to lighten the mood without really being there. Melissa she was scrolling through images of high-end armchairs on her tablet, frowning, concentrating on a project that she was clearly more passionate about than our presence. And I watched them. No longer with the expectation of being included. But with the cold lucidity of a woman ready to turn a page. I watched them live in a house they thought they had acquired. Like setting foot on the ground without ever checking if it's solid. So, calmly, I took my cloth napkin, folded it gently, and placed it next to my plate. Then I raised my head and, in a clear voice, without trembling, I said, "I sold the house." The world stopped. 1 second. 2. 3. The kind of silence that only comes after an inner explosion. Melissa looked up from her tablet as if she hadn't understood. Then her features froze. And she screamed, unable to control her voice. "What?" Bruno, destabilized, dropped his fork on his plate. The metallic sound resonated like a death knell. "Mom, it's not possible," he stammered, almost sheepishly. "You mean, are you kidding me? You sold out our house?" I looked at them both. Not harshly. Calmly. Truthfully. The house has always been in my name. I've never hidden that from you. The papers were signed a few days ago. The transfer will be complete in a month. Melissa jumped up, almost knocking over her chair. Her face was red, her eyes shining with anger mixed with panic. "You had no right to do this without us. This is a betrayal. Do you know how much we've invested here? We've redecorated, renovated, we've betten this house." I looked her straight in the eyes. Without raising my voice. Just with that calmness you acquire when you've cried in silence for too long. "You once told me this wasn't my home." I just listened. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Bruno," he rubbed his forehead, unable to formulate an objection. He seemed suddenly to realize the depth of what he had allowed to happen, of what he had let it be said. I stood up in turn, picking up my napkin, folding it calmly. "I found a family who will respect this house. They will make it a real home." The following days were difficult, the atmosphere was icy, Melissa no longer spoke to me. She entered rooms, avoiding my gaze, slamming doors with suppressed rage. She expressed herself through abrupt gestures, heavy sighs, and bitter silences. Bruno, he, clumsily tried to accommodate everyone. He suggested to me one morning, while I was making tea. "Mom. If you want, we can move you into the studio next to ours. You'd be close to Emily, we could arrange everything." I smiled at him softly. With that sad tenderness a mother has for a son who has grown up too fast, but not deeply enough. "No, Bruno. Thanks. I need a place of my own. A real one." The morning of the move, the sky was clear. The birds were singing, as if to defy the surrounding tension. I had packed my belongings discreetly, room by room, avoiding making noise, as always. When Emily came home from school and saw the boxes, she ran to me. "Are you really leaving, Grandma?" Her big, wet eyes broke my heart. I hugged her with all the strength my tired back could muster. "I'll miss you, Grandma," she whispered, sniffling. I looked into her eyes, stroked her cheek, then said, "We'll see each other every Wednesday, darling. I promise. I'll teach you how to make my famous cookies, will you?" She nodded, a shy smile on her lips, between tears. And in that little suspended moment, I knew that the essentials remained intact. Today I live in an apartmentcasi on the third floor of a peaceful residence for cultured retirees, nestled in the heart of an old but charming neighborhood. The walls are lined with books, my windows overlook a small park where the leaves dance to the rhythm of the seasons. In the morning, I like to sit by the window with a steaming cup of tea, watching the passers-by hurrying or strolling. I regularly participate in a book club, where we passionately debate classics and new literary works. I also share my knowledge by giving volunteer history classes to young people from the neighborhood, delighted to pass on memories, forgotten stories, lessons from the past. I laugh more often, too. Genuine laughs, light smiles that return like promises kept. I've rediscovered a zest for life I thought I'd lost. The family who took over the house hasn't forgotten me. Sometimes they send me photos. Snapshots of the garden in spring, where the rose bushes Raymond loved so much have been replanted. A bittersweet wink that warms my heart. Sometimes I even receive a little handwritten note from Claire, the new owner, assuring me that they care for every stone, every flower, with respect. And me? I am free. Free to exist fully, free to be respected, heard, loved for who I am. Not like an old lady who is tolerated out of politeness, but like a whole woman, rich in her experiences and her struggles. One day, in the supermarket aisle, I ran into her. Melissa. Her face was marked by fatigue, her features tense. She seemed nervous, almost lost in thought. She said to me, her teeth clenched, her gaze hard, "We could have kept this house if you hadn't been so resentful." I looked at her calmly. Without anger. Without needing to justify or defend myself. I simply smiled at him, a gentle but firm smile, a smile that carried all the weight of the story, of the dignity regained. "No, Melissa. You could have kept it, if you had known how to honor the one who built it." She looked down, unable to answer. And I left. Worthy. Whole. Finally at my house. Home isn't the one you own. It's the one where you can be yourself, without masks, without fear. Where you find peace, freedom, and the strength to start over.